Before we begin, welcome to Still Missing. We dig into the world's most haunting unsolved cases. New episodes every week. Subscribe so you don't miss a single case. On the evening of February 24, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, drove together to a college basketball game in nearby Chico. They were Gary Mathias, age 25, Jack Madruga, age 30, Bill Sterling, age 29, Ted Wyha, age 32, and Jack Hoot, age 24. All 5 men had mild to moderate intellectual disabilities and were part of a close-knit group that played on a local Special Olympics basketball team together. They were excited about the game, and according to their families, they were in good spirits when they left. They planned to watch the game, buy snacks, and drive straight home. They never returned. Their car, a turquoise 1969 Mercury Montego, was found 5 days later on a remote mountain road in Plumas National Forest, about 70 miles northeast of Chico, and completely in the opposite direction of their homes. The car was in perfect working condition. There was gas in the tank. The keys were not in the ignition. It was parked neatly on the roadside at an elevation of about 4,000 feet, in an area that was covered in deep snow and accessible only by a narrow, winding mountain road. There was no logical reason for the 5 men to have been anywhere near that location. The 5 men were not experienced outdoorsmen. They had no hiking gear, no winter clothing beyond light jackets, and no supplies. The temperature in the mountains that night dropped well below freezing. Several of them wore only sneakers. For 5 men with intellectual disabilities to have voluntarily driven into remote, snow-covered mountains in the middle of the night, abandoning a working vehicle, and then walked deeper into the wilderness, it made no sense to their families, to investigators, or to anyone who knew them. A witness came forward with a deeply strange account. A man named Joseph Schons told police that he had been stranded on the same mountain road that night when his car became stuck in the snow. He was suffering chest pains, possibly a mild heart attack, and had been waiting for help. He said he saw headlights approach and stopped near his vehicle around midnight. He shouted for help, but instead of approaching, the occupants of the other car turned off their lights. Schons said he then heard voices and saw what appeared to be a group of people walking up the road, away from the cars, into the darkness and the snow. He also claimed to have seen a second vehicle, a pickup truck, in the area. When he was finally rescued the following morning, no one else was around. His account, while uncorroborated, was consistent with the location where the Mercury was later found. A massive search was launched across the Plumas National Forest. It covered hundreds of square miles of rugged, mountainous terrain. The search went on for months. In June 1978, 4 months after the disappearance, the first remains were found. Ted Wyhar's body was discovered inside a U.S. Forest Service trailer, a small emergency shelter located about 19 miles from where the car had been abandoned. The trailer was stocked with survival supplies, canned food, matches, propane, heaters, and bedding. There was enough food and fuel to sustain several people for weeks. Yet Ted Wyher had starved to death. He was found wrapped in 8 sheets pulled from a storage cupboard, emaciated, with a growth of beard suggesting he had survived 4 weeks, possibly as long as 8 to 13 weeks before dying. He had lost approximately 80 pounds. He had removed his shoes at some point, and severe frostbite had destroyed most of his feet. The food in the trailer was untouched. The heaters were not lit, the matches were unused. Everything Ted Wyher needed to survive was within arm's reach, and he did not use any of it. This is the detail that has haunted investigators and researchers for over 4 decades. Ted Wyher was not unconscious. He was alive long enough to pull sheets from a cupboard and wrap himself for warmth. He was cognitively aware enough to create a makeshift bed. But he never opened a can of food, never struck a match, never turned on the propane heater that could have saved his life. Some investigators believe that Ted's intellectual disability prevented him from understanding how to operate the heaters or the can opener. Others argue that he may have been in such a severe state of psychological shock and hypothermia that he was physically incapable of performing even simple tasks. A third possibility is that someone else was with him, possibly Gary Mathias, who had been taking care of him and who left or died, leaving Ted alone and unable to fend for himself. Gary Mathias was the only member of the group with a notably different background. Unlike the others, Mathias had served in the U.S. Army and had been stationed in Germany before receiving a medical discharge related to a psychiatric condition, believed to be schizophrenia. He had been prescribed antipsychotic medication and was considered stable by his doctors and family. However, some investigators have speculated that Mathias may have experienced a psychotic episode on the night of the disappearance, possibly triggered by the stress of an unfamiliar situation, and that his erratic behavior may have influenced or confused the other 4 men into following him into the mountains. This theory is impossible to confirm, but it remains one of the most discussed explanations. Near the trailer, investigators found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. Their bodies were found outdoors, partially skeletonized, in the snow about a mile from the trailer. The cause of death for both was determined to be hypothermia. They had frozen to death. The remains of Jack Hoot were found further away, also dead from exposure. The 5th member of the group, Gary Mathias, was never found. Despite extensive searches of the area over the following years, his body has never been recovered. He is the only one of the 5 whose fate remains completely unknown. The central mystery of the Yuba County 5 is not how they died. 4 of the 5 clearly died from exposure and starvation. The mystery is why. Why did they drive into the mountains instead of going home? Why did they leave a working car on a snowbound road? Why did they walk 19 miles through deep snow in sneakers? Why did Ted Weihaar starve to death in a cabin full of food? Why were the heaters not lit, the matches not struck, the cans not opened? These questions have never been adequately answered. What happened to the Yuba County 5 on that February night in 1978 remains one of the most perplexing and heartbreaking unsolved cases in California history. 5 friends went to a basketball game and never came home. Their car was found in a place they had no reason to be. They walked into the snow with nothing to protect them. And one of them sat in a cabin for weeks, surrounded by everything he needed to live, and slowly died without touching any of it. Gary Mathias has never been found. His family has spent over 4 decades searching. If he survived and walked out of the forest, he vanished into a new life. If he died in the wilderness, his remains are still out there, somewhere in the vast expanse of the Plumas National Forest. If you have any information about this case, the Yuba County Sheriff's Department maintains an open file. Next week, California, 1981. A teenage girl returns to her family's mountain cabin to find her mother, brother, and his friend murdered in the living room. Her younger sister is missing. The Keddy Cabin murders. Don't miss it. Here's what haunts me most. Ted Weihaar had food, fuel, and shelter, and he still died. Why didn't he use any of it? Was he injured, confused, or waiting for someone who never came back? Tell me your theory in the comments. If this case kept you watching to the end, hit subscribe. There are dozens more cases like this still to come. This is Still Missing. Some cases never close.